Welcome to another episode of Value Talks with your host, Travis Tassett.
Welcome to this episode of Value Talks. My name is Travis Tassett, your host, and I'm sitting here with John Palumbo. John is the executive chairman of ValueHealth and New Health and serves a number of roles within our companies. And John, just wanted to welcome you to the podcast. Thank you for joining me today.
Great to be back. Love doing these.
Second appearance on Value Talks. The first time we talked through your framework of the 9 guiding principles for a high performance culture. And the topic this conversation is going to be about the balanced scorecard in business. And before we dive into that, could you give our audience a little bit of a background and history of who you are and also maybe where this balanced scorecard, this performance management system kind of came from?
Sure, be happy to. So 30 plus years, I'm getting to the point where I don't count too many past 30 anymore. So 30 plus years in healthcare, in a very interesting opportunity that I've had in healthcare over the years of doing a combination of startups that stayed private, startups that we got public, and then very large Fortune 100 corporate experience. And as you craft your career, you always try to learn from your wins and losses through the journey. You have a tendency to remember your losses more than your wins. And so, it started way back with a startup company of note that ultimately became Allscripts, and we were, a couple of friends of mine from the Philadelphia area. We started Allscripts, put some companies together, converted it from, believe it or not, it was a pharmaceutical cabinet that was put in physician offices, and it's now become one of the largest electronic medical record companies in the world. And so got me into the technology side. Decided that it wasn't for me to move to Chicago and leave Philadelphia. So stepped down from my executive role there and joined, at the time, a healthcare technology company called Shared Medical Systems. Was part of that leadership team that ended up selling that to Siemens Medical Solutions. Obviously, Siemens, a worldwide global company, massive company that was competing to get into the space in the U.S. And at that time, I had the opportunity to run what was called their National Health Services business unit, which was for the first time, believe it or not, really where I had a national organization. Very remote, spread out. We were serving the largest multi-health hospital health systems in the country, both for-profit and not-for-profits. And this was my first attempt at managing something this large. It's one thing to be in a startup and you grow it and you have your own pains, and then you have this. And all of a sudden I had seasoned executives all over the country. What was I going to do? And back in the 90s, 2 professors out of Harvard Business School, Kaplan and Norton, wrote a book on the balanced scorecard, which is really now it's a proven performance management process and program that really helps execute on strategy by defining critical initiatives that tie to your strategic goals, and you link measures and very defined targets, and you align deep through the organization all these folks so that everybody really understands where are we going, how are we going to get there. More importantly, what's my role? How do I contribute individually to this greater task? And how do I define success? And am I going to be able to have feedback along the way that's telling me I'm doing the right things the right way? So
they have that line of sight. Everybody has that line of sight, and they know where they're trending, right? And where we're trending as a collective group.
And this was the first concept of you actually build a balanced scorecard around different pillars. The people pillar, the finance, the growth, the service, the quality, and the community. In our case, we've sort of tweaked it to us. The original balanced scorecard really had four pillars. It started with people, Then it was always really processes, meaning the service and the operational side. Then there was the customer perspective, and then there was always the last one you build on was the financial. Because prior to that, most companies really manage their business from a financial view. Financials can only be lagging indicators. They can't tell you what's going to happen because you're not really connecting all of the critical initiatives.
That's right. They're not leading indicators, they're lagging
Yeah.
indicators. So those four were people, processes. What was the third one?
Customer,
Customer,
and then
and then financial.
and financial, yeah. And the people side is really now morphed into innovation and growth of the human person side of it, the greatest asset that a company has. So I did this out of pure fear of failure. I'm like,
Necessity is
okay,
the mother of all
yeah,
invention, John.
This is beyond my pay grade. I don't know how I'm going to do this. And you have to remember, this is the mid 90s. So email was just, I know this will sound all of us today. Email,
I still remember those days.
you had to dial a different phone number to get to a different office. There people weren't connected through VPNs. There was none of this. And so, you were still sending mail. And so my goodness, there was no virtual meetings. There was nothing. I mean, so you physically had to go to meetings to even begin to explain this to people. So all of a sudden, we became the most successful business unit that Shared Medical Systems and then eventually Siemens ever had. We began to dominate, share capture. We had incredible recurring revenue streams. And so the story then became, okay, well, nobody else in all of Shared Medical Systems or Siemens did this. Our unit was the only one. And I truly did it because I was terrified that I was not going to know how would I have a work-life balance that says, I've got all these people everywhere. How do I help them be successful? How will we achieve our goals? And oh, by the way, I've got 5 kids. At the time, I didn't have 5. There were still some coming. So that had really good success. We ended up selling the Shared Medical Systems to Siemens. That was just around 2000. Reunited with 2 friends of mine that we started Allscripts with, and we built a company called iTrax, which we took public. And iTrax became the leader in on-site primary care, closed-door pharmacy, Pop Health at the time, which was just brand new, population health, and occupational health. And basically, we merged 2 companies together to form iTrax, grew it from a startup to about $150 million in revenue, ended up selling that to Walgreens as part of their Take Care Health division. And it was the second time that I tried to do a balanced scorecard. And this one did not have quite as much success organizationally and culturally. We had just put together these companies. There was a lot of management and leadership transition. And one of the secrets that I now, having done this several times, have found that this only works if you really, really get buy-in at the leadership level, and then the leadership level forces it up through the organization to the people who make the difference every day, which is the people that either touch a customer, in our case a patient, touch a partner, in our case a physician or a partner, and then who actually deal with the internal customers, because there's many of these initiatives that are cross collaborations amongst the organization and in our case companies.
Due to the interdependencies.
Of course.
Yeah.
So it didn't work really well at iTrax, although we had a successful venture and ended up selling it. That's the nice end of the story. But I learned a lot on how to make it easier and how to get consensus and how to have other people feel a part of that decision process.
And John, if I could, why do you think that it didn't have as much traction or get as much success? Is it because of the lack of buy-in at the top? Was that the difference between the two, or what do you attribute that to?
One, and some clearly that's a part of it. The companies had just been put together. I don't think there was truly an alignment as deep as you needed on vision, values, purpose. There hadn't been a well-defined culture yet. It was still storming, forming, norming.
Not quite
going through
performing.
change, right.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the insight to wait. I just said, this worked for me before, so let's go do it. And so I probably did a cram down at the beginning,
Yeah.
which didn't have a very good reception. So then you end up going, okay, well, is it a people problem? Is it a process problem? What is it? And so, I had to pull it back, and you learn from it, right? Didn't work. Didn't mean the company didn't do, but because of it, I don't think we ever achieved what we could achieved before we ended up selling the company. Because again, it's really an organizational alignment, and when you look at why do 9 out of 10 companies fail to execute on strategy, there's a vision barrier, there's a people barrier, there's a management barrier, right, and then there's a sort of a strategic barrier. So you sort of have to blend all those together, and then you have to pick the right time, and then you have to figure out how deep do you go. So this is probably way more than you wanted, but you're asking how this got to where it is
Well,
today.
yeah,
so.
it's a little bit of everything. I was kind of wanting to go through one of my, how I like quotes, and you've shared some of your favorite quotes with me, is by Rudyard Kipling, and said, I keep 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. Their names are what and why and when, and how and where and who. So I was thinking, okay, we've kind of defined the what of the balanced scorecard, which is just a strategic management system, right?
Right.
And the what of it being, what makes it balanced? Is it because it's not just financial and it includes other areas, pillars, people quality?
Yeah,
What are your thoughts on that?
That is the truest concept. Kaplan and Norton turned it inside out and said, you have to first figure out what are the most important things you do around your people assets. And now in today's genre, it's really focused on innovation and growth of the person. So how do you do that? Well, is it knowledge management? How do you force alignment? How do you force accountability? When I say force, I don't mean force it on the person. It's how do you force that into your culture, into your DNA, into your operating rhythms? And everybody laughs at it, geez, it was an overnight success. And I shared with our leadership team the real history of, if you took a look at 2 of our greatest overnight successes, Apple was still fledgling before it released the iPod.
And that was Jobs' return to the
Yes,
company.
that was 25 years after it started.
Right.
Starbucks, was still at 100 stores 25 years after it took, and then they began to mature their culture and their business rhythm and all of those things. So to me, that's what makes it balanced. It forces you as either a sole contributor, as an employee, which we all are. It forces you as a manager, a supervisor. It forces you as an executive leader. It makes you plan your week and your work and your day around multiple important elements without forgetting them. Because why? Because they're measured, your name's on it, and you green, yellow, red scorecard it, which is why it's called the balanced scorecard. And you do that under a meeting rhythm, which is what also a lot of companies fail to do. 85% of all the management teams fail to spend 1 hour a month discussing strategy. So that's why 9 out of 10 fail. Only 60% of organizations link their organizational goals to compensation and recognition. So, there's just basics, and you'd sit there and go, well, geez, that's easy. Well, I guess it isn't.
If it was easy, perhaps we'd be doing more of it.
Right. So that's what makes it balanced, and that's how you begin to align those organizational goals, and you can build communication programs around it, and people begin to gain an understanding of, again, why they're doing things, why they're doing them the way they're doing them, how they need to hold themselves accountable to it. And at the end of the day, the real secret to high performance is, can you look at each individual and get the answer to these 2 questions? Do they need to be managed, or are they managing me if you're their supervisor? Because if they're managing up, then that means you've reached alignment, you are eliminating surprises, you've built an environment where people are safe to talk and let them know, geez, I'm having a problem with this, I need some help over here. And that's the kind of environment we all strive to have. And then
They're bringing questions to you before you're asking them those questions,
That's right.
right? They're,
That's
they're out in front
managing
of
up.
it. They're thinking through it.
right, that I don't have a to-do list for them, they have a to-do list for me.
Right.
That's the perfect world.
Yes.
Because my job is to help everybody else be successful. And if we drive that through and up into the organization, that's great. And then the second question is, does that individual wow you with their critical thinking and their output? And when you can sit there and go yes to those two questions, you really feel like you've created a high-performance team and a high-performance culture. And I think the balanced scorecard is that strategic management system that lets you tactically know whether you're on track or not from accomplishing your goals the way you want to do it, which is aligned to our culture, aligned to our values, and so on.
Why do you feel it's important? I mean, I think you've answered this a little bit, but I'm just going to go through the who, what, when, where, why, and how. And is this important because of the alignment and that results in performance? I mean, what are your thoughts?
That's a great question. So I'm probably going to answer it a little differently. So our vision is to be the most trusted partner in healthcare
Right.
as we transform the ambulatory surgical space from fee-for-service, generation one, to an entire new way of delivering great patient care, a great patient experience at the best value you can build, which is value-based care.
Right.
Trusted partner, there's an annual study that's done. Only 2% of all companies ever achieve a trusted partner status with their customers and/or partners. You can be a vendor, you can be a solution provider, you can go up the track. Only 2%.
That's shocking.
Well, if that's our vision and that's what we aspire to be, so why? Because if we don't execute throughout this organization, and if we don't take the talent that we have here and arm them to be successful and hopefully help them fulfill their aspirations of being great at what they do and help them have a career path to do other things and to grow, if we don't do that, we have no chance of ever getting to fulfill our vision, which is to be a trusted partner. So I believe that when we rolled this out conceptually to the executive leadership team, I had prepped it with Dan. I said, Dan, you can't have any unrealistic expectations. We probably won't be able to do that this year. It takes time. I couldn't believe it. So I laid out the concept, and the ELT, the executive leadership team, which is our acronym for it, they came back and said, no, we want to do it now. So we then had every single company within ValueHealth adopt the balanced scorecard, develop it to meet their own, fulfill the goal of ValueHealth, but then to fulfill the mission of each and every company's purpose. And they have now executed it and actually connected it to our LEM goals and now have it deeply embedded into the organization, which if this is the last company I ever get to do it with, I will have declared it victory.
Our listeners, LEM is just the performance management platform that we use, that we establish objective goals in, and then 90-day plans and so on and so forth. So John, you talked about that a little bit in terms of how it's deployed. It really starts with the senior leaders, and in this case, our ELT, executive leadership team, and then cascades down from there. Any other comments about how that process unfolds that you want to make or share with us?
Well, I think the process starts with developing a strategy map, and that strategy map in each of the pillars identifies the critical success factors. George, I need a break.
Water.
Sorry, I'm choking.
No, you're good.
I've already been talking too much.
I'll just ask you maybe one or two more.
Yeah, that's great.
How it's deployed, and then
Well, LEM will be the deployment process, really, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then the scorecards will be produced.
But if we go through these last couple of how it's deployed, do you think we covered it, like, in terms of?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure how.
I mean, hopefully it's been a fun story for them.
Yeah, should be. Forgot to hit start, so I wonder where we're at from time wise. Darn it. This is nothing. You should see this. Dan makes us stop and let me go. Let me talk about this for a minute. Now, George, don't record this.
Oh, my God.
It's par for the course.
Okay.
George, what's the time right now?
I have 21:28.
All right, so we're good. We'll wrap up in 5. When you're
So where
ready,
were we?
he'll edit it. We were talking about how it's deployed, so we could just start with that again in terms of
Right, the strategy map.
yeah.
So it starts with a strategy map which connects to what's called umbrella goals. So the umbrella goals in our case, just simply stated, are we want to grow our EBITDA, our earnings before interest, depreciation, and taxes, amortization schedules, which is just a common financial term, which is a target that everybody's measured by in terms of how you're doing. And then secondly, our commitment to transforming the ambulatory surgical segment of the U.S. healthcare, which is arguably almost $900 billion annually. There's about a $400 billion annual waste because of surgical care being done at the highest cost, arguably lesser quality sites of care compared to what we can do in our ambulatory surgical centers, specialty surgical hospitals, and hyperspecialty centers. So you start with creating this strategy map of, in each of those pillars, what are 2 or 3 things that are absolutes I have to do, non-negotiable, they will never stop being my priority.
So those are mission critical goals for the year?
Mission critical initiatives.
Initiatives.
So it could be a program, it could be a technology software implementation, it could be moving to net promoter score for everything we do. And so each organization builds this strategy map. Each organization then says, to do that initiative, here is the definition, which we call a measure of success. That's how I'm going to define success.
Okay.
And oh, by the way, this is my target. That target could be a monthly target, it could be an annual target, it could be a delivery date, meaning I'm going to launch case tabs in X number of facilities, and I'm going to do that by June 30th. We could use that as an example.
So it's a SMART goal: specific, measurable, attainable,
with owners.
relevant, time bound.
With ownership. And the way it gets measured is each month in the executive leadership team meetings, each company presents their scorecard, and that becomes our executive lead team meeting. We only talk about how are we doing on our scorecard. These are the initiatives we set out. These are the initiatives that the budget supports. How are we doing? And did certain ones get completed? And then they can move off the strategy map or the scorecard. You may replace it, or you may not need to replace it. And then those are the non-negotiables, and then that helps you to force yourself to manage your time, your priorities, because you know my role is to deliver on this portion of that strategic initiative. So it's really cool to see when it all comes together.
And those initiatives, once they're identified and the measure of success is defined, then the stoplight report, green, we're trending in the right direction. If we haven't completed it already, yellow, we're on par.
Yeah.
And then, of course, red, we're
Yeah.
trending in the wrong direction or failed to execute.
And the best part is you actually have reds and yellows. because that's reality. There's going to be some speed
It's in
bumps,
process, right?
Right, or it's slowing down, or oh my goodness, something happened over here. And so it helps you feel okay to say, hey, listen, I'm just letting you know, I may need some help from other organizations. And it could be as simple as an unexpected cost. And it's just normal. But what happens is you help eliminate those surprises. You are able to build trust through transparency. You're able to show that you're engaged and connected to your initiatives, which goes back to sort of the guiding tenets of how we want our company to be: connect, engage, build trust through transparency, and the principles we talked about last time.
And so once that scorecard is set up, defined, mission critical initiatives are defined and identified, then how does that cascade down?
Yeah, so I think that's where the LEM platform has been great for us, because that's a company-wide, all the companies adopted the LEM platform. So all of this is then translated into both your performance plan, your performance evaluation, and then it also affects potentially how you get bonused if you're in a qualified bonus plan. So you connect it all the way through. It allows you to do your 90-day plan, allows you to do your iterative report card scoring. And whether you use the LEM platform for all of it, it just makes you understand every time we meet, we're going to be talking about this.
I mean, you can be doing it in an Excel document if you wanted to,
Of
but
course.
yeah.
Yeah.
Platform is irrelevant.
If it helps you be more efficient at it, then go for it, right?
Sure.
And so I think the coolest part is I've never seen a leadership team, I've never seen a company advance this far, this fast, utilizing a balanced scorecard approach. And I feel that when I go around and get an opportunity to talk to people, I think really people begin to be able to say who we are, what we do, how we do it, and why people are doing it with us. And that defines our purpose, and that defines the kind of contribution we want to make to making a difference in healthcare.
Perfect. John, I think we covered kind of the who, what, when, where, why, and how. Is there any closing comments you want to make about the balanced scorecard approach, or just anything in any favorite leadership quotes or anything you'd like to leave with us?
I think the most important thing is to ask every one of our associates and colleagues, okay, you're living it now. Tell us how you can make it better. The real secret here is for everybody to outthink the person next to them. And it doesn't always mean you have to outwork them, because if you outthink them, you can work maybe even smarter. So make it better, challenge your managers, and most important, you have to hold your managers accountable, because the balanced scorecard is two directions. It works from the manager to the associate that they're coaching and mentoring, and it also empowers the employee to go manage their manager. And so I'd ask everybody to keep us challenged and keep us honest.
Lastly, John, what's the leadership quote you've been sharing? Actions speak so.
Oh, yeah.
I had to get that in the.
I can't hear what you say because your actions speak so loudly.
Talk is cheap. John, just want to thank you for all that you say and be and do for our company. So
Well,
thanks for joining
Thanks for
me today.
having me again. I look forward to coming back. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Value Talks. Please subscribe and be sure to leave a review.